She walked into a mall with her son, not knowing the billionaire owner was her ex-husband. Virginia McGowan walked through the gleaming marble entrance of Westridge Luxury Mall, her 7-year-old son's hand tucked safely in hers, completely unaware that the man watching her from the executive suite 3 floors above was the same man who'd walked out of her life 8 years ago. The same man who'd left her pregnant and alone. The same man who now owned every square inch of the building she was standing in, including the oxygen she was breathing. Donald Harris's hand froze on his coffee cup. His heart stopped, then restarted with a violent thud that made his chest ache. Because the child holding her hand had his eyes. His exact eyes. And Virginia had no idea he was watching. No idea he'd been searching for her for 7 years. No idea that in the next 60 seconds, their carefully separated worlds were about to collide in the most devastating way possible. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And to my amazing returning viewers, thank you for being here. You're the reason I do this. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end for this one. This story is going to wreck you in the best way possible. Now, let's rewind 8 hours. Virginia stood in her tiny kitchen, packing Cameron's lunch with the kind of precision that came from doing the same thing 1,000 times. Peanut butter and jelly, because it was cheap and he loved it. Apple slices in a small container. A juice box. 1 cookie she'd baked last night because even though money was tight, her son deserved small joys. "Ma, can I get new sneakers today?" Cameron appeared in the doorway, his current shoes held together with duct tape she'd carefully applied 3 days ago. Virginia's heart cracked a little. Just a little. She'd gotten good at not letting the cracks show. "We'll see, baby." She kissed his forehead, breathing in the smell of his coconut shampoo. "Finish your breakfast." She didn't tell him that she'd been saving $20 a week for 2 months. That today, finally, she had enough for basic sneakers at the discount store. That she'd skipped lunch for the past 2 weeks to make those 20s add up faster. Cameron was 7. He didn't need to know his mother went hungry so he could have shoes. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Paloma. "Girl, they're having a sale at Westridge Mall today. Designer outlet stores. Might find something for Cameron there." Virginia stared at the message. Westridge Mall. She hadn't been there in years. Couldn't afford to even walk through those pristine corridors lined with stores that sold single shirts for what she made in a week. But a sale. A real sale. She typed back, "How much are we talking?" 70% off. Some kids' stuff marked down even more. "Get your behind over there before the good stuff is gone." Virginia looked at Cameron, at his taped-together shoes, at his sweet face that looked so much like. No. She didn't think about him. Not anymore. Not after 8 years of silence. "Change of plans, baby." She forced brightness into her voice. "We're going somewhere special today." Question for you. Have you ever run into an ex in the most unexpected place? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one. 3 hours later, Virginia stood outside Westridge Luxury Mall, her hand tight around Cameron's, feeling distinctly out of place. The building was obscene. All glass and chrome and marble, the kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Women in designer dresses glided past. Men in suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent checked their Rolex watches. "Wow," Cameron breathed. "Ma, this place is huge." "It is, baby." She squeezed his hand. "But we're just here for shoes, remember? In and out." She'd worn her best outfit, a navy dress she'd thrifted last year and a cardigan she'd carefully mended. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked presentable. Professional, even. But she still felt like everyone could see straight through to the reality. A 34-year-old single mother working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. They walked through the entrance. The cool air hit her face, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and fresh leather. Her reflection stared back from a dozen mirrored surfaces, a woman who'd once believed in fairy tales, who'd once thought love was enough, who'd learned the hard way that some men weren't built for staying. "Where's the shoe store, Ma? I'll find it." She pulled out her phone, opening the mall directory. "Let's see. There's a discount outlet on the second floor. That's where we're headed." What Virginia didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that at that exact moment, 3 floors above her head, Donald A. Harris was standing in his executive suite, going over quarterly reports with his CFO. Donald was 38 now. 8 years ago, he'd been a different man. Reckless. Immature. Terrified of commitment. He'd walked away from Virginia when she'd told him she was pregnant, and he'd spent every day since drowning in regret so deep it had its own zip code. He'd built an empire since then. Made his first billion by 33. Acquired this mall 2 years ago. Bought half the city's real estate. Became the kind of man people whispered about in boardrooms and business magazines. But none of it, not a single dollar, not a single achievement, had filled the hole where Virginia used to be. "Sir." His CFO, a sharp-eyed man named Lawrence, was looking at him expectantly. "The Riverside property? Your decision. Buy it." Donald didn't even look up from the window. From this height, the people below looked like ants. Small. Insignificant. Easy to forget. Except one woman, walking through the entrance with a child's hand in hers, made his blood go cold. He moved to the window without thinking. Pressed his hand against the glass. No. It couldn't be. But it was. Virginia. After 8 years of searching. 8 years of private investigators finding nothing. 8 years of lying awake wondering if she was okay, if she'd kept the baby, if she hated him as much as he hated himself. There she was. And beside her, a little boy with dark curly hair and skin the color of warm caramel. Their son. Donald's knees went weak. He braced himself against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Sir." Lawrence's voice came from far away. "Are you all right? Clear my schedule." Donald's voice was hoarse. "All of it. Now." "Sir, you have the board meeting in an hour." I said clear it. He couldn't stop staring. Virginia was moving toward the escalator, her son skipping beside her, completely unaware she was being watched. I need a minute." Lawrence left. Smart man. Donald stayed at the window, watching the only woman he'd ever loved disappear into his mall, into his building, into his space, and not knowing he was there. His hands were shaking. He, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, was shaking like a teenage boy. He pulled out his phone. Called his head of security. "Marcus." He stopped. Drew a breath. "There's a woman. Black, mid-30s, navy dress. She's with a young boy. I need you to tell me everywhere she goes. Every store. Every floor. But don't approach her. Just watch her." "Sir." "Do it. Now." He hung up. Pressed his forehead to the glass. "Virginia. After all this time. Honest question, if someone left you when you needed them most, would you give them a second chance? Comment below. I'm curious what you think." Virginia found the discount outlet on the second floor, wedged between a high-end jewelry store and a boutique that sold handbags worth more than her car. The outlet itself was small but packed with inventory. Racks of shoes lined every wall, organized by size and style. A tired-looking woman sat at the register, barely glancing up when they entered. "Look around, baby." Virginia released Cameron's hand. "Find something you like that's in your size." Cameron took off like a shot, heading straight for the sneakers with the light-up soles. Virginia's heart squeezed. Those would be expensive, even on sale. She moved to the clearance rack in the back corner, her practiced eye scanning for size 3, for anything sturdy that wouldn't fall apart after a month. The price tags made her wince. Even at 70% off, this was going to eat most of her savings. But Cameron needed shoes. That was all that mattered. "Ma." Cameron's excited voice carried across the store. "Ma, look at these." She turned. He was holding up a pair of sneakers, basic black and white, no lights, no fancy logos. Simple. Perfect. And on sale for $35. Virginia felt something loosen in her chest. She could do $35. She could do that and still have enough left over for groceries. Those are perfect, baby. She walked over, took the shoes, checked the size. Let's try them on. Cameron sat on the little bench, his legs swinging with excitement. Virginia knelt in front of him, carefully removing his taped-together shoes and setting them aside. His socks had holes. She'd mend them tonight. The new sneakers slid on perfectly. Cameron stood, bounced on his toes, grinned up at her with a smile that lit up the world. They fit, Ma. They're so cool. They are cool. She smiled back, blinking away the tears that had no business being there. You like them. I love them. Then they're yours. She stood, shoes in hand, and walked to the register. Pulled out her carefully folded bills. The cashier rang them up without comment, put them in a bag, handed over the receipt. Done. Simple. Easy. Except when Virginia turned around, there was a man standing in the doorway of the store. Tall. Well-dressed in a suit that screamed money. Dark hair with silver at the temples. Ice-blue eyes that were staring at Cameron like he'd seen a ghost. Virginia's blood turned cold. No. It couldn't be. The man took a step forward. His gaze moved from Cameron to her face. And she watched in slow motion as recognition dawned. As his expression shifted from shock to something that looked like pain. Virginia. His voice. God, his voice. Deeper than she remembered. Rougher. But unmistakably his. Donald. Virginia's first instinct was to grab Cameron and run. Her second instinct was to punch Donald Harris directly in his handsome, lying face. She did neither. Instead, she stood frozen, her son's new shoes clutched in her hand like a shield, while the man who'd abandoned her 8 years ago stared at her like she was a miracle he'd given up praying for. Virginia. He said her name again, softer this time. Almost reverent. I can't believe. Don't. The word came out sharp. Cold. She found her voice somewhere in the shock. Don't say another word. Donald's mouth closed. His gaze drifted to Cameron, who was looking between them with growing confusion. Ma. Cameron tugged her hand. Who's that? No one. Virginia's voice was ice. We're leaving. She moved toward the door, but Donald shifted, blocking her path without actually touching her. Please. His voice cracked. Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You're not entitled to 5 seconds. She kept her body between him and Cameron, protective instinct flaring hot. Move. Virginia. Move. Now. Something in her tone must have gotten through, because Donald stepped aside. But as she passed, his hand shot out, not touching her but close enough she could feel the heat of it. That's my son, isn't it? It wasn't a question. Virginia stopped. Her jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. Slowly, she turned to face him. You lost the right to call him that when you walked out. I know. Donald's face was pale. I know I did. But Virginia, please, I've been looking for you for 7 years. Ever since 7 years. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You've been looking for 7 years? How interesting. Because my address hasn't changed. My phone number hasn't changed. I've been right where you left me, Donald. So forgive me if I don't believe a single word coming out of your mouth. Cameron pulled harder on her hand. Ma, you're scaring me. The fear in his voice cut through her rage. She looked down at her son, their son, and forced herself to breathe. It's okay, baby. She smoothed his hair. Everything's okay. Let's go. Wait. Donald's voice was desperate now. Please. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I need to know his name. Please. Just his name. Virginia stared at him. At this man she'd loved so completely it had nearly destroyed her when he left. At this stranger in an expensive suit who'd built a fortune while she'd built a life from scraps. Cameron, she said finally. His name is Cameron. Donald's breath caught. Cameron. Now move. This time, he did. Virginia walked past him, through the store, out into the mall corridor. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking. Cameron's small hand in hers was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Ma. Cameron's voice was small. Why was that man looking at us like that? I don't know, baby. Lie. Such a lie. Don't worry about it. But she was worrying. She was worrying about a lot of things. Because Donald Harris wasn't some random ex. He was a billionaire. One of the wealthiest men in the state, if the business magazines were to be believed. And now he knew about Cameron. Now he knew he had a son. Let me ask you something. When someone shows up after years of silence, do you owe them anything? Drop your thoughts below. Donald stood in the empty store, his heart trying to break through his ribs. Cameron. His son's name was Cameron. He had a son. A 7-year-old son who looked exactly like him and didn't know he existed. His phone rang. Marcus. His head of security. Sir, the woman. I know. Donald's voice was hollow. I saw her. Should I continue surveillance? No. He closed his eyes. No, I'll handle this myself. He hung up, leaned against the wall, tried to remember how to breathe. 7 years ago, he'd started looking for Virginia. The moment he'd gotten sober, the moment he'd cleaned up his act, the moment he'd become someone worthy of being a father. He'd hired the best investigators money could buy. They'd searched everywhere and found nothing. Because apparently, she'd been right there all along. Right in the same city. The same neighborhood, probably. Hidden in plain sight. Or not hidden at all. Maybe he'd just been looking in the wrong places. Making it too complicated when the answer was simple. She hadn't moved because she'd had no reason to run. She'd just been living. Surviving. Raising their son alone. While he'd built an empire. The injustice of it made him want to put his fist through the wall. Instead, he pulled out his phone again. Called his assistant. Jenna. I need you to pull everything you can find on Virginia McGowan. Quietly. Current address, employment, financials. Everything. Sir. I'm not doing anything illegal. She's Cameron's mother. My son's mother. And I need to know if they're okay. Silence. Then. I'll have it within the hour. Thank you. He hung up. Straightened his tie. Walked back toward his executive suite like his entire world hadn't just been turned upside down. Because it had. Virginia was here. In his mall. In his building. In his life again. And he wasn't going to let her disappear. Not this time. Not ever again. Virginia made it to the parking garage before the shaking started. She unlocked her ancient Honda, helped Cameron into his booster seat, closed the door. Then she braced herself against the car and tried very hard not to have a complete breakdown in a public parking structure. Donald. After 8 years of nothing, he'd just appeared. Like a ghost she'd finally stopped believing in. And he'd seen Cameron. Her phone rang. Paloma. Virginia answered, her voice tight. Hey. Girl, how'd the shopping go? Did you? Paloma stopped. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. You're lying. What happened? Virginia closed her eyes. I ran into Donald. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, Donald? As in Cameron's father Donald? The one who's been MIA for 8 years Donald? Yes. Where? The mall. He was just there. And he saw Cameron. Her voice broke. Paloma, he knows. He knows about Cameron now. Okay. Where are you? Parking garage. About to drive home. No. Come to my place. Right now. Don't go home. Just come here. Paloma. I'm serious. Come here. We need to talk about this. Virginia wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Too shaken. Okay. We're coming. She drove to Paloma's apartment in a daze, her mind replaying the moment over and over. The look in Donald's eyes. The way he'd said Cameron's name. The desperation in his voice when he'd begged for 5 minutes. I've been looking for you for 7 years. What did that even mean? He'd been looking? With what? A blindfold on. Paloma met them at the door, pulling Virginia into a tight hug while Cameron ran inside to play with Paloma's daughter, Azalea. Tell me everything, Paloma said, guiding Virginia to the couch. So Virginia did. Every word. Every look. Every horrible, confusing second. When she finished, Paloma was quiet for a long moment. So what are you going to do? Nothing. Virginia's voice was firm. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. He had 8 years to find us. 8 years. And now that he's suddenly interested, I'm supposed to what? Welcome him back with open arms. I'm not saying that. Paloma chose her words carefully. But he's Cameron's father. And from what you're telling me, he seemed genuinely shocked to see you. Maybe he really was looking. Then he's terrible at it. Or maybe you're really good at being invisible. Virginia flinched. Because that hurt. Because it was probably true. She'd gotten very good at being invisible over the years. At blending in. At not taking up space she couldn't afford. It doesn't matter, she said finally. He made his choice 8 years ago. I've made mine. Cameron doesn't need a father who only shows up when it's convenient. Does Cameron get a say in that? Virginia's head snapped up. Excuse me. I'm just saying. Paloma held up her hands. Cameron's 7. He's asking questions about his dad. You've told me that. And now his dad is here. Shouldn't Cameron get to decide if he wants to know him? He's 7 years old. He doesn't get to decide things like that. Then you need to decide. But decide for him, not for you. Virginia wanted to argue. Wanted to defend herself. But the truth was sitting heavy in her chest. Paloma was right. This wasn't about her and Donald. This was about Cameron. About what was best for him. And she had no idea what that was. Be honest with me. If you were in Virginia's shoes, what would you do? Would you let the father back in? I want to hear your thoughts. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse office, Donald was reading through the file Jenna had compiled. And with every line, his heart broke a little more. Virginia McGowan. Age 34. Currently employed at Riverside General Hospital as a medical records clerk. Second job waitressing 3 nights a week at a diner downtown. Renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Westbrook. Not a great neighborhood, but not the worst. Credit score decent, but clearly stretched thin. Car 14 years old, multiple repairs in the past year. She was drowning. Working 2 jobs and barely keeping her head above water. Raising their son alone while he'd been living in a penthouse, driving luxury cars, eating at restaurants that cost more per meal than she probably made in a week. The injustice of it was staggering. Donald set down the file. Looked out at the city skyline. At the buildings he owned, the empire he'd built, the success that suddenly felt hollow and meaningless. What had he been doing while Virginia struggled? Making money. Closing deals. Building a fortune he didn't need and couldn't enjoy. While she'd been raising Cameron. Their son. Alone. His phone rang. His mother. Donald, darling, I heard you canceled the board meeting. Is everything all right? Eleanor Harris. 62 years old, sharp as a knife, and the only person who'd never given up on him during his worst years. Mom. His voice cracked. I found her. I found Virginia. Silence. Then, "Oh, sweetheart. And I have a son. His name is Cameron. He's 7 years old, and I didn't even know he existed." "Oh, Donald." He told her everything. The mall. The confrontation. Virginia's coldness. The file on his desk that detailed exactly how hard her life had been while his had been easy. When he finished, his mother was quiet for a long time. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally. "I don't know. She doesn't want to see me. She made that very clear." "Can you blame her?" "No." He laughed bitterly. "No, I can't blame her at all. I was the worst version of myself when I left. I was selfish and scared and completely unprepared to be a father. And she paid the price for my cowardice. So fix it." "How?" "She won't talk to me." "Then make her listen." His mother's voice was firm. "You can't undo the past, Donald. But you can change the future. That little boy deserves to know his father. And whether Virginia wants to admit it or not, she deserves support. Real support. Not just money, though God knows you should be providing that, but actual partnership in raising your son." "She'll never forgive me." "Maybe not. But that's not the point. The point is doing the right thing now. You can't change what you did 8 years ago, but you can change what you do today." Donald closed his eyes. "I don't even know where to start." "Start by respecting her boundaries. But don't disappear again. Make it clear you're not going anywhere. That you're committed to being a father to Cameron, whether she likes it or not." That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. "Then get a lawyer. But don't give up, Donald. You've spent 8 years trying to become someone worthy of them. Don't waste that growth by running away again the moment it gets hard." She was right. Of course she was right. "Thanks, Mom. Anytime, darling. And Donald, bring them to dinner. Soon. I want to meet my grandson." She hung up before he could protest. Donald sat in his office as the sun set over the city, thinking about 7-year-old boys in taped-together shoes and the women who loved them enough to make miracles happen with $20 bills. And he made a decision. He wasn't going away. Virginia didn't have to forgive him. She didn't have to love him. She didn't even have to like him. But she was going to let him be a father to Cameron. One way or another. 3 days passed before Virginia saw Donald again. She'd almost convinced herself it had been a fluke. A one-time encounter. That maybe he'd accepted her coldness as the rejection it was meant to be and moved on with his billionaire life. Then she came home from her shift at the hospital to find a Mercedes parked outside her apartment building. Donald was leaning against it, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored pants, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled, "Men Who Ruin Your Life Twice." Virginia's steps slowed. Cameron was at after-school care for another hour. She was alone, which meant there was no buffer. No excuse to avoid this conversation. "You need to leave," she called out, still 20 feet away. Donald straightened. "I'm not here to fight. I don't care why you're here. You need to leave." "Virginia, please." "No." She stopped in front of him, her keys clutched tight in her hand. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up at my home after 8 years and expect—" "What exactly? What do you want, Donald?" "I want to know my son." The words hung in the air between them. Virginia's jaw clenched. "He's doing fine without you." "I don't doubt that." Donald's voice was careful, measured. "You've clearly done an amazing job raising him. But that doesn't change the fact that he's my son too. And I want to be in his life." "Too late." "I don't accept that." "You don't get to accept or not accept anything." Her voice rose. "You left, Donald. You walked away when I needed you most. You don't get to decide you want to be a father now just because it's convenient." "It's not about convenience." "Then what is it about? Guilt? Some midlife crisis. Trying to check off good father on your list of accomplishments. Donald flinched. I deserve that. You deserve worse than that. Probably. He took a breath. But Virginia, I'm not leaving. I'm not going away. I want to be part of Cameron's life, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. Including forcing yourself into our lives against my wishes? If I have to. His blue eyes met hers, steady and determined. I won't let pride or fear or even your very justified anger keep me from my son. I've already lost 7 years. I'm not losing any more. Virginia stared at him. At this man who used to make her believe in fairy tales. Who used to hold her like she was precious. Who'd promised forever and delivered nothing. You can't just buy your way into his life, she said quietly. I know. Money doesn't fix 8 years of absence. I know that too. Then what exactly is your plan here, Donald? Show up, throw some cash at us, play daddy for a few weeks until you get bored. My plan, he said slowly, is to be consistent. To show up every single day if that's what it takes. To prove to both of you that I'm not the man I was 8 years ago. People don't change. They do. I did. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a card, held it out. I've been sober for 7 years. I got therapy. I built a life I'm proud of. And every single day, I've thought about you and wondered if you kept the baby. If you were okay. If you hated me. Virginia didn't take the card. I did hate you. I still do. That's fair. And I kept the baby because I'm not you. I don't run away when things get hard. The barb hit its mark. Donald's face tightened. No, you don't. And I'm sorry I did. Sorry doesn't give me back 8 years. No, it doesn't. He put the card on the hood of her car instead. But maybe it's a start. That's my personal number. Not my office. Not my assistant. Me. Call me when you're ready to talk about Cameron. About custody arrangements. About how we're going to co-parent. We're not going to co-parent. You're going to leave us alone. Virginia. I said no. She picked up the card, fully intending to tear it up. Instead, she found herself tucking it into her pocket. Just in case. Stay away from us, Donald. I mean it. She walked past him, into her building, up the stairs to her apartment. Closed the door. Locked it. Stood there shaking. Because part of her, the part that remembered what it felt like to be loved by him, wanted to believe he'd changed. But the rest of her knew better. Men like Donald Harris didn't change. They just got better at pretending. Quick question. Has anyone ever come back into your life claiming they've changed? Did you believe them? Let me know in the comments. Donald watched Virginia disappear into the building, his chest tight with frustration and something that felt dangerously close to despair. She wasn't going to make this easy. Not that he'd expected her to. But the coldness in her eyes, the way she'd looked at him like he was nothing, that hurt. He got back in his car, pulled out his phone, called his lawyer. Richard. I need you to research family law for me. Specifically, father's rights when there's been no custody agreement in place. Donald. I have a son. 7 years old. I didn't know about him until 3 days ago. His mother won't let me near him. I need to know what my options are. Silence. Then, are you sure you want to go that route? Courts tend to favor mothers, especially when there's been abandonment. I didn't abandon him. I didn't know he existed. Can you prove that? Donald stopped. Because no. He couldn't prove that. Virginia had never told him she was pregnant after that first conversation 8 years ago. Never reached out. Never gave him the chance to know. But was that her fault or his? He'd been the one who walked away. Who made it clear he wanted nothing to do with a baby. who'd essentially told her to handle it alone. "Never mind," he said finally. "I'll figure something else out." He hung up, sat in his car outside Virginia's building until the sun went down and the streetlights came on. And he thought about 7-year-old boys who deserved better than a father who only showed up when it was convenient. The problem was, he had no idea how to be better. How to prove to Virginia that he wasn't the same scared, selfish man who'd run away 8 years ago. But he'd figure it out. He had to. Because Cameron was his son. And he wasn't going to lose him before they even had a chance to know each other. Virginia was pulling a double shift at the diner when Eleanor Harris walked in. She didn't recognize the woman at first. It had been 8 years after all, and Eleanor had aged. Gracefully, elegantly, but aged nonetheless. Her dark hair was streaked with silver now, pulled back in a chic bun. She wore pearls and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Virginia's monthly rent. But when their eyes met across the diner, recognition was instant and mutual. Virginia's blood ran cold. Eleanor slid into a booth by the window, picked up a menu, waited. Virginia considered refusing to serve her. Considered asking Marlowe, the other waitress on duty, to take the table. Considered walking out right then and there. But she needed this job. And she wasn't a coward. She grabbed a notepad and walked over, her professional smile firmly in place. "Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get you?" Eleanor looked up. Her eyes, so much like Donald's it hurt, were kind, sad. "Hello, Virginia. Mrs. Harris." Virginia's voice was carefully neutral. "Coffee, please. And can you sit with me for a minute?" "I'm working." "I know. I'll make it worth your while." Eleanor pulled out her wallet, extracted a $100 bill, set it on the table. "Please." Virginia looked at the money. At Eleanor. At the desperation in the older woman's face that reminded her so much of Donald's 3 days ago. She sat down. But she didn't touch the 100. "You have 5 minutes, she said. Eleanor smiled sadly. "Thank you." She folded her hands on the table. "I'm not here to defend Donald. I'm here because I want to meet my grandson." Virginia's spine stiffened. "No. Virginia. I don't care who you are or what you want. The answer is no. Just hear me out, please. Your son abandoned me when I was pregnant. He walked away and never looked back. Why would I let any of you near Cameron? Because Cameron deserves to know his family." Eleanor's voice was gentle but firm. "And because despite everything, Donald is his father. That matters. It didn't matter 8 years ago." "You're right. It didn't. And I'm sorry for that." Eleanor's eyes were wet. "I'm sorry Donald failed you. I'm sorry he was such a coward. I'm sorry you had to raise that beautiful boy alone. But Virginia, he's different now. He really is. People don't change, Mrs. Harris. They do. I watched my son hit rock bottom 8 years ago. I watched him destroy himself with drinking and partying and running from every responsibility he had. And then I watched him crawl his way back up. He got sober. He got therapy. He built a life. And every single day, he's tried to find you." Virginia laughed bitterly. "He's terrible at it then. Or you're very good at being invisible." The same words Paloma had said. They stung just as much the second time. Eleanor reached across the table, not quite touching Virginia's hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not even asking you to let him into your life. But please, at least consider letting him know Cameron. That little boy deserves a father. And Donald deserves a chance to be one. He had a chance. He chose not to take it. He was 29 and terrified. He's 38 now and desperate to make things right. People grow up, Virginia. They learn. They change." Virginia pulled her hand back. "I need to get back to work. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking." Eleanor stood, left the 100 on the table. For what it's worth, I think you're an incredible mother. Cameron is lucky to have you. She walked out before Virginia could respond. Virginia sat alone in the booth, staring at the $100 bill, feeling something crack open inside her chest. Because the truth was, she was tired. Tired of working 2 jobs. Tired of counting pennies. Tired of being both mother and father to a little boy who deserved better than taped-together shoes and skipped meals. And maybe, just maybe, Cameron did deserve to know his father. Even if she'd never forgive Donald for leaving. Even if she'd never trust him again. Even if it killed her to let him in. What would you do? When family shows up, does that change things? Drop your answer below. That night, after Cameron was asleep, Virginia pulled out Donald's card. Stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and typed out a message. We need to talk. About Cameron. Not about us. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park. Don't be late. She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came within seconds. I'll be there. Thank you. Virginia set down her phone, buried her face in her hands, and wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Or if maybe, just maybe, she was finally doing the right thing for her son. Riverside Park was quiet on a Wednesday afternoon. The playground was empty except for a few toddlers and their nannies. Virginia sat on a bench overlooking the river, her hands clasped in her lap, wondering if she was about to make a deal with the devil. Donald arrived exactly at 2. She'd expected him to be late. Men like him always were, too important for punctuality. But he was early, actually. She saw him standing by the entrance, scanning the park until his eyes found her. He walked over slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Smart man. Thank you for meeting me, he said, staying standing. Not presuming to sit until she gave permission. Virginia gestured to the other end of the bench. Sit. He did. Kept a careful distance between them. His hands were clenched on his knees. I don't want your money, Virginia said without preamble. Let's get that straight right now. I'm not here for child support or a payoff or any of it. I know. I'm here because Cameron is starting to ask questions about his father. And I'm tired of lying to him. Donald's throat worked. What have you told him? That you weren't ready to be a dad. That you had things you needed to work through. That it wasn't his fault. She looked at him directly. I didn't tell him you abandoned us. I didn't poison him against you. But I also didn't make excuses for you. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. She took a breath. If, and this is a big if, I let you into Cameron's life, there are going to be rules. Anything. Don't agree before you've heard them. Donald nodded. Okay. Tell me the rules. Virginia had spent all night thinking about this. What she would accept. What she wouldn't. What Cameron needed versus what would destroy her to give. Rule 1. You don't get to just show up and play fun dad. This is a commitment. You're either all in or you're out. No half measures. No disappearing when it gets hard. I'm all in. Rule 2. I'm his mother. What I say goes. You can have opinions, but I get the final say on schools, medical decisions, everything important. Donald's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Okay. Rule 3. You don't badmouth me to him. Ever. No matter how angry you get at me, you keep it away from Cameron. Same goes for you. Agreed. She swallowed hard. Rule 4. We start slow. Supervised visits. In public places. You don't get to take him anywhere alone until you've proven you're trustworthy. How long? As long as it takes. She met his eyes. You lost the benefit of the doubt 8 years ago, Donald. You have to earn it back. Fair. He was quiet for a moment. Can I add a rule? Virginia tensed. What? You let me help financially. I know you said you don't want money, But Virginia, he's my son too. I should be contributing. Let me pay for his school supplies, his clothes, whatever he needs. I can provide for my son. I know you can. You've been doing it for 7 years. But you shouldn't have to do it alone anymore. His voice was gentle. Please. Let me do this. Virginia wanted to refuse. Wanted to prove she didn't need anything from him. But the truth was, she was exhausted. And Cameron did need things she couldn't always afford. Better shoes. School activities. Maybe even a college fund someday. Fine, she said finally. But we set up a separate account for Cameron. You put money in. I take it out only for him. No strings attached. Deal. Donald pulled out his phone. What bank do you use? They spent the next 15 minutes setting it up. Donald's fingers flew over his phone screen, transferring an amount that made Virginia's eyes water. That's too much, she protested. It's 8 years of back child support. It's not nearly enough. He put his phone away. There. It's done. Use it however you see fit. Virginia looked at her own phone, at the notification showing a deposit that would change everything. That would mean she could quit the diner job. That would mean Cameron could have new clothes that weren't thrift store finds. That would mean security. It would also mean being indebted to Donald. This doesn't change anything, she said. Between us, I mean. You can't buy my forgiveness. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be a father. He turned to face her fully. When can I meet him? Officially, I mean. Not just seeing him in a store. Virginia's heart clenched. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Here at the park. 1 hour. I'll be there the whole time. Okay. Donald's voice was thick. Thank you, Virginia. I promise I won't let you down. Not this time. You better not. She stood. Because if you hurt him, Donald, I will destroy you. I don't care how much money you have or how powerful you are. You hurt my son, and I will make your life hell. I believe you. He stood too. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. For leaving. For not trying harder to find you. For missing 7 years of his life. I'm sorry. Virginia wanted to say she accepted his apology. Wanted to be magnanimous and forgiving. But she wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe she never would be. Saturday, she repeated. Don't be late. She walked away before the tears could start. Because despite everything, despite the anger and the hurt and the 8 years of struggling alone, part of her was terrified that letting Donald in would be the biggest mistake of her life. And part of her was terrified it wouldn't be. Honest question, would you take the money? Or would pride make you refuse? I'm genuinely curious. Comment below. Saturday came too fast. Virginia had spent 2 days coaching Cameron, trying to prepare him without overwhelming him. Baby, remember how I told you your dad had things he needed to work through? Cameron, focused on his coloring book, had nodded absently. Well, he's worked through them. And he wants to meet you. That got his attention. Cameron's head snapped up, his eyes, Donald's eyes, wide with surprise. My dad. My real dad. Yes, baby. Does he know about me? Virginia's heart cracked. He does now. And he's very excited to meet you. What's he like? How to answer that? Your father is a billionaire who abandoned us but claims he's changed? Your father is the man who broke my heart but might be trying to mend it? You'll see on Saturday, she said instead. We're going to meet him at the park. Just for a little while. Now it was Saturday, and Virginia was watching Cameron change his shirt for the 3rd time, anxiety radiating off him in waves. This one's better, right? He held up a blue t-shirt. They're all good, baby. But which one makes me look? I don't know. Cool. Virginia knelt in front of him. Cameron, listen to me. Your dad is going to love you no matter what shirt you're wearing. Okay. But what if he doesn't? Cameron's voice was small. What if he meets me and decides he doesn't want to be my dad after all? Oh. Oh, her poor baby. Virginia pulled him into a fierce hug. That's not going to happen. I promise. He wants to know you. Very much. Then why did he leave before? There it was. The question she'd been dreading. Because he was scared, she said honestly. Being a parent is scary. And he wasn't ready. But he's ready now. Are you sure? I'm sure. Lie. She wasn't sure of anything. But Cameron needed reassurance, not her doubts. They arrived at Riverside Park at 5 minutes to 2. Donald was already there, standing by the same bench they'd sat on 3 days ago. He was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, but he still looked expensive. Polished. Terrified. Cameron's hand tightened in Virginia's. Is that him? Yes, baby. He's tall. He is. They walked over slowly. Donald saw them coming, and his entire body went rigid. Then his face did something complicated, fear and joy and grief all at once. Virginia stopped a few feet away. Donald. This is Cameron. Donald crouched down to Cameron's level. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Hey, buddy. I'm your dad. Cameron stared at him. At his face. His eyes. Seeing the similarities that Virginia had always seen. You look like me, Cameron said finally. Donald laughed, wet and broken. Yeah, I do. Or you look like me. One of those. Ma says you're ready to be my dad now. I am. I really am. Donald's eyes flicked to Virginia, full of gratitude. I'm sorry it took me so long. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. Cameron considered this. Then, do you like basketball? The question was so sudden, so normal, that both adults laughed. I love basketball, Donald said. Do you play? Yeah. I'm on a team at school. We're called the Tigers. I'm not very good yet, but coach says I'm improving. I'd love to come watch you play sometime. If that's okay. Cameron looked at Virginia. She nodded. Okay, Cameron said. Our next game is Friday after school. I'll be there. They talked for an hour. About basketball and school and video games and all the normal things 7-year-old boys talk about. Donald was good with him. Patient, interested, genuine. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He laughed at Cameron's jokes. He told stories about when he was Cameron's age. And slowly, Virginia felt something inside her unclench. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe Donald really had changed. Maybe. When the hour was up, Donald stood reluctantly. I should let you guys go. But, Cameron, can I see you again next week? Yeah. Cameron's face was lit up. Can we play basketball? Absolutely. I'll bring a ball. Cool. They said goodbye. Cameron ran ahead to the car, already chattering about his dad who played basketball and told funny stories and looked just like him. Virginia started to follow, but Donald caught her arm gently. Thank you, he said. Virginia, thank you. I know how hard that was. It wasn't for you. It was for Cameron. I know. But still. Thank you. He released her arm. He's amazing. You've done an incredible job raising him. I know. A ghost of a smile. You're not going to make this easy on me, are you? Not even a little bit. Good. I don't deserve easy. He stepped back. Same time next week. Same time. Virginia walked to her car, where Cameron was already buckled in and talking a mile a minute about his dad. And she thought, maybe we'll survive this after all. Maybe. What do you think? Is Donald genuine? Or is this going to end badly? Drop your predictions in the comments. I love hearing your theories. 3 weeks. That's how long the fairy tale lasted before reality came crashing down. 3 weeks of Saturday afternoon visits that gradually extended to weekday dinners. 3 weeks of Cameron lighting up every time Donald's name was mentioned. 3 weeks of Virginia watching from the sidelines as father and son built a relationship she'd never thought possible. 3 weeks before Donald's mother showed up at Virginia's apartment unannounced at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Virginia opened the door, saw Eleanor Harris standing there with tear-streaked makeup and shaking hands, and knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. What happened? Virginia pulled her inside. Is Donald? He's fine. Physically. Eleanor sank onto the couch. Oh God, Virginia. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ice filled Virginia's veins. Tell me what happened. There's a woman. Vivian. She and Donald were involved a few years ago. She's been trying to get him back, and when she found out about Cameron, Eleanor's voice broke. She went to the press. Told them everything. That Donald has a secret son he abandoned. That you've been raising him in poverty while Donald built his fortune. That he only acknowledged Cameron after you threatened legal action. Virginia's world tilted. That's not. None of that is true. I know. But she doesn't care about truth. She cares about hurting Donald. And the story broke an hour ago. Eleanor pulled out her phone, showed Virginia the headline. Billionaire developer's secret son, Donald Harris accused of abandoning child for 8 years. Below it was a photo of Cameron, her baby, walking out of school, his face clearly visible. Virginia's hands started shaking. How did they get that photo? Paparazzi. They've been following you for 3 days, apparently. Taking pictures. Gathering information. Eleanor's face was anguished. Donald is losing his mind. He's had his lawyers send cease and desist letters to every outlet that published Cameron's photo, but it's too late. Virginia felt nauseous. Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows who he is. I'm so sorry. Donald never wanted this. He's been trying so hard to keep Cameron's life private. Not hard enough. Virginia stood abruptly. I need you to leave. Virginia. Now. Please. Eleanor left. Virginia locked the door behind her, then went to Cameron's room. Her son was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that his life had just been turned upside down. She pulled out her phone. 17 missed calls from Donald. Dozens of texts. The most recent one read, "Please call me. I'm so sorry. I'm fixing this. I promise I'm fixing this." Virginia didn't call. Instead, she opened her laptop and started searching. The story was everywhere. Every news site, every gossip blog, every social media platform. They dug up everything: her address, her jobs, Cameron's school, her financial records. They'd interviewed neighbors who called her standoffish and secretive. They'd found old photos of Donald during his partying days and juxtaposed them with recent pictures of Virginia leaving the diner at midnight, looking exhausted. The narrative was clear: rich deadbeat dad finally forced to acknowledge poor abandoned family. Virginia's phone rang. Donald. She answered. Virginia. You promised. Her voice was ice. You promised you wouldn't hurt him. You promised you'd protect him. I'm trying. You're failing. Do you know what's going to happen when he goes to school tomorrow? What the other kids are going to say? What their parents are going to whisper? I've already contacted the school. They're implementing security measures. Security measures? Donald, they published his photo. Every person in this city now knows who he is and where to find him. I know. And I'm going to sue every single outlet that won't help. The damage is done. She was shouting now, months of carefully controlled anger finally breaking free. This is exactly what I was afraid of. This is why I didn't want you in our lives. Because people like you destroy everything you touch. You can't help it. It's who you are. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that my 7-year-old son's face is plastered all over the internet? Is it fair that I'm going to have to explain to him why people are taking pictures of us? Is it fair that you brought your world into ours and now we're paying the price? Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, what do you want me to do? I want you to disappear. Like you did 8 years ago. Except this time, stay gone. Virginia, please. I mean it, Donald. Stay away from us. You've done enough damage. She hung up. Blocked his number. Then she sat on her couch and cried for the first time since he'd come back into her life. Because she'd been right all along. Men like Donald Harris didn't change. They just found new ways to break your heart.